week. They also assert a partner's life, we were talking about last week. So a sense of something there from its own side. There has to be even, yeah. Okay. So that's that school. The next one up, the Sutra school, because they follow the particular sutras, and you can see there's two.
Excuse me. Sorry, nearly there.
That's okay. There are two subdivisions of that. They either follow Dharmakirti's 7 treatises on valid cognition or Vasubandhu's Treasury of Manifest Knowledge, Abhidharma, basically. So the Sutra school, following Sutra, that a person accepts both self-cognition and external objects. So it's sort of the views becoming a bit more refined. Well, we're not there yet. We're not there yet.
Oh.
I don't know if I need that for the recording. Oh, well, then we're okay. Can you hear me okay? Oh, you've started the recording.
Yes,
hello. All righty. That's okay. Keep going. All right. So, yeah. So you can see it's a slightly more refined view. Then we get to the Mahayana, and this is where we ended up last week with the mind-owner school, Chittamatra. They do assert external objects. Oh, they don't assert external objects existing from their own side, because they see everything, mind only, everything imputed from the mind. So, but they also assert there's got to be something truly self-existent, in other words, permanent, is this self-cognition, this mind basis of all, as it's often interpreted as. And there's many, many different sub-schools of that particular school, right? Yeah, so we went through that last week. And where we're up to now is the middle way, Madhyamika schools. So 2 schools here who do not assert true existence at all, not from the side of the object, not from the side of the mind, not anywhere. So they, not even one atom, right? So this is the most refined view. And between that, we have these 2 subdivisions, the autonomy school, Svatantrika, which is also divided up, and the consequent school, Prasangika, which is the one that we follow the tradition of. Okay, so that's just a handy map. And then if you look on the other side, there was questions about chronology and so forth. So this is quite useful to see who asserts what, who was associated with what. So chronologically, you see that middle way school was already asserted by Nagarjuna. So this is the school that we follow in the 1st, 2nd century. So Arya Nagarjuna, we mentioned last time. And you can see that it's scrolling down that like Buddha Palita, Chandrakirti, who commented, did Entering the Middle Way commentary on Nagarjuna's Root of Wisdom text. And Lama Atisha, Lama Shantideva in the 8th century, then Lama Atisha, we know the story of Lama Atisha, and then Lama Tsongkhapa, who then looked at all the different views. I mentioned last time, especially in that volume 3 of the Lamrim Chenmo, Great Treatise on the Path to Enlightenment, where he sort of looked at the different views in that style of what we say debate or reasoning, because the Prasangika is middle way consequence. So the debating is about, hold on, you assert this. Now, what would be the consequence of that? And they say
of
that
the assertion.
Of the assertion. I can't think of one right off the top. I'm trying to think of an assertion that wouldn't stand up. Yeah.
But it's basically if I assert this, then that means.
Well, if I assert things are independent, right? Then no, I assert that table is permanent. This table is permanent. Therefore, it cannot be impermanent, right? If it's a permanent phenomena, it can't be an impermanent phenomena. And what are the consequences of that? If it's a permanent phenomena, it did not come into existence, right? Because it's permanent. It's a permanent table, right? And so I could also assert, nobody does, that table is partless. It's table, you know? But then, so you've got to say, well, the consequence of that is it wouldn't have legs, it wouldn't have a top, it wouldn't have this, it wouldn't have that, it wouldn't have sides, it wouldn't have, you know, so this is a very broad level. Nobody asserts. Hence debating. Nobody does assert that. Okay. Sorry, Thomas, we were a bit late with starting the recording, but welcome. Okay. Okay, so this is where we're up to now, but you can see we've got the history there of the different who's related to who. So, for example, we see, I'm not going to go through everyone, I don't think we're, and just to say the Great Exposition School, where it says it's got 18 sub-schools, they're all listed there. And if you really want to study in detail, you study each and every one. However, as we say today, what is asserted out of that is a Theravada. Yeah, okay. And interesting enough, if you look at the third footnote, Vasubandhu. So Vasubandhu was a half-brother of Arya Sangha. And so Arya Sangha, who Buddha Maitreya took up to Shita heaven after the dog incident. And then he received all the teachings from Buddha Maitreya on Ornament of Clear Realization, which is a commentary on, which is about Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. And so he received all these teachings, all the bodhicitta teachings and so forth. And Vasubandhu. So here it's interesting. Vasubandhu was first Vaibhashika, Great Exposition School, right? And then Sautantrika, the Sutra School, the next one up, and then Chitramatran. And because that was the school that mind only Arya Sangha subscribed to. So it's quite interesting because, when people say, oh, why do we have to know about these lower schools? Because, as I said last week, it's also seeing, well, where does my mind assert what that asserts? And where does my mind assert this? And where does so you can see that he did that whole evolution in one lifetime through 3 different schools. He wasn't, you say he had a very open and sharp mind. And when given the right reason, was able to see that, oh, yes, that's a more refined view. That's a more refined view. Maybe if he lived a bit longer, he would have been middleweight consequence, who knows. But it does help with us to see how these views get refined and refined and refined. Yeah. So then we have, just to mention, Kamala Sheila, for example. So Kamala, I mentioned Kamala Sheila. So he was a disciple of Shantarakshita, who was part of the Middle Way Autonomy School, which we're going to look at, one particular, one particular subset of that. So Kamala Sheila is famous for, he went with Shantarakshita to Tibet. And so this was at the time of King Tuson Detsen. And there was a Chinese propounder there of what was called sudden enlightenment, that through meditation, not using reasoning and so forth, through meditation, ta-da, sudden enlightenment. We all wish for that one. But King Trizon Detsen had declared that he didn't hold true Dharma, this Chinese Mahayan, his name. And so then there was the famous debate between the Mahayan, the Chinese propounder, and Kamala Shila, which Kamala Shila won. And so then, so all the sudden enlightenment texts of the decree of King Trizon Detsen were destroyed, because it's like, this is not true Dharma. So we don't want to have this, like have those texts existing. And I find those things are an important point if we look today, where there are, false orators. I mean, the Buddha talked about false orators that are propounding wrong tenets. And that's part of our reason for studying the correct tenets of whichever school, because, we want to get it, of course, according to Buddhist teaching. So King Trizon Detsen, and in recent times, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has said he was King Trizon Detsen. He has said also he was Lama Tsongkhapa. So little bits more are coming out. It sort of makes sense, because if we see all of those as emanations of the Buddha Chenrezig, just as we do His Holiness the Dalai Lama, before there were Dalai Lamas, they had to be somebody, they were somebody important, significant, right? So you could say the Dalai Lama's always held, well, I don't know about always, but we don't know all his lifetimes, middle way consequence school views. We could posit that. Okay.
So the autonomous school would be the ones that believe that you can just suddenly...
No, they don't. That got chucked out. We'll get to that. I'm just still going through here. No, they don't. They're holding a, we could say, correct, but not as refined as the consequence school view. Still correct, but not. It's not quite there as Lama Tsongkhapa did. It's just like you've under-negated things. You haven't quite negated things. So you can both under-negate, or you could over-negate, which is nihilism. You chuck everything, not chuck out the wrong views, but chuck out the Buddhist teachings. So, okay. So also, some years ago, and I'll just say the significance of Kamala Shila, because from that debate, it really changed the understanding within Tibetan, really established Tibetan Buddhism quite strongly, because, Nagarjuna and so forth, it came from an Indian tradition. So he really had a big impact on that, coming also from that Indian tradition. Had a big impact on Tibetan Buddhism to this day. So probably most famously we know about his 3 volumes of the stages of meditation. And I remember when His Holiness the Dalai Lama was teaching the middling stages of meditation. So that's one that we tend to study most in our NFPMT and so forth. Anyway, so a lot of people saw when it was advertised, oh, Dalai Lama's meditate. I've got to go and meditate with the Dalai Lama. And then you get there day one, and it's sort of like what we were going through last week. And it's like, oh, yes, straight into the deep end of the pool, because I was thinking my doctor was thinking, she didn't, I found out later, didn't end up going. And I'm thinking, what does my doctor think about this? She wasn't Buddhist, but she liked the Dalai Lama. Anyway, yeah. So, anyway, just a bit of side story, that one. And then we have, as we go down, I'll just pick out a couple, like Haribhadra, for example. So some of these names we've already heard of, we can say, and others you think, well, I haven't heard of them, but watch this space. If you do more studying, they'll suddenly pop up. So Haribhadra, commentary on Maitreya's ornament of, on the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras that is then presented within the Ornament of Clear Realization. So all of these are highly influential in the evolution of the view of emptiness and of the Buddha's teachings on emptiness and dependent arising. Of course, Lama Atisha, we don't need to add to, we could spend all that time telling his story, or Lama Tsongkhapa as well. But I think enough to say that this is the school that we find ourselves most comfortable with. So somehow we're in past lifetimes we must have done a hell of a lot of study and meditation and so forth. So don't, remember that. You've worked hard to get here. All right, so Madhyamika. So both of this middle way autonomy and middle way consequence. So we're going to look at those this afternoon. So one who asserts Mahayana tenets, okay, well, you could say, well, the mind only also do. But what the mind only don't do is the next bit, and does not assert true existence even nominally, even conventionally. So it doesn't say there's got to be something out there from its own side, even the slightest little subtle atom or whatever. It doesn't say there is this, sort of mind basis of all that, is truly existent. Not truly existent meaning, ultimately existent meaning, either a self-sufficient substantial entity. So we could say the mind basis of all is one of those, or a permanent independent entity. Okay. So there's two sub-schools that two schools of Madhyamika, middle way. And, the idea of middle way, it's between the extremes of permanence or eternalism. I will go on forever. This relationship will last forever. Diamonds are forever. What else is forever? Everything's forever, isn't it? Yeah, well, until it's not. We hold these views in society, or at least enough to sell those products that people want to sell. Diamonds are forever. Well, actually, no. I mean, they might be for their whole lifetime, I rejoice, But as I say, my parents, even they were married for 63 years, they still had to be separated. My father died 5 years before my mother did. So, there was a separation of death. Wasn't going to go on forever. And they would have hated her, me and my siblings celebrate, my father's birthday, which is so irrelevant now because he's gone on. It's just like we're stuck in the past,
I think what you're really celebrating is him.
We're celebrating him, yeah. Which is now a memory. Yeah, we're celebrating our memories. Yes, exactly, our memories, not him. So we could debate that. Are we celebrating him? Which him are we celebrating? So these are the sorts of things that we start debating. The hymn that we remember, yeah, but do we all remember the same hymn? No. And it depends from moment to moment which bit of hymn we're remembering, etc. You can see how we can have a big debate. Pity my family are not into having those big debates. They might. Okay. So middle way autonomy, what they assert that exists from its own side is the reasoning. So this they do by way of reasoning, but that reasoning is an independent reasoning, right? But they also, along with the middle way consequence, don't accept true existence of phenomena, even conventional, even nominally. Okay. But they've got some sense of some inherent existence of the base. When we say base, we've got to say there's got to be a base there suitable to be labelled table, suitable to be labelled Chökyi, suitable to be labelled computer, suitable. There has to be a base suitable to be labelled. It is labelled, and then both schools would agree on that it comes into existence as that by way of being labelled, yes.
But the base is always something physical?
Yeah. 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 Okay. So a nature of a base that itself has some inherent characteristics. Okay, so it's getting more refined, but we would say not quite there yet. So this school, founded by Baba Viveka, who asserted that things come into existence in dependence upon a correct reason, the nature of the base. This is the correct reason that has its inherent characteristics. So existing by way of its own characteristic, existing from its own side, natural existence are synonymous. And this is why when that sense of independent inherent existence gets translated, a good translator will use all the terms, because this school asserts true existence, this school asserts, by way of its own characteristics or from its own side. So the different schools use different, because of different views, different understandings. And so by the time you get to middle way consequence, it negates all of those. But here, there's still something. It's just like we can't give on there being some substance there. So in terms of things, conventional truth, they'd say there are true and false perceptions of objects. And this is another differentiation. So true objects are things that can't be asserted to exist in any other way than the way that they appear to us. The vase appears to us. They would assert that as being a true object, vase. It can't be perceived to exist in any other way than as a vase. Of course, big debates now happen, right? But false objects are those that can be perceived to exist in a way other than the way it appears. So I look in the mirror and I see my face. I see my face in the mirror, but it's an image. It's not my face. If I pinch the mirror face, I don't go, ouch, So it's a false, this is what they assert, a false object. And this is why when we have had our teachings from the Dalai Lama, from Lama Zopa Rinpoche and so forth, where it's like a mere hallucination, a mirage, an image. So in the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha, it has all that. It states all that, that it's a mere mirage, reflection of the moon on a still lake, etc., an analogy. So these, anyway, jumping ahead to middle way consequence, would assert that all objects appear like that. In other words, all objects are conventional truths are false truths. False truth meaning it doesn't exist the way it appears to us. So sometimes they're called cheating, liars. Of course, it's us who's misperceiving, not the anyway. And then an ultimate truth, when is an object, is a phenomenon, not an object, a phenomena which, when perceived by direct mental perceiver and direct mental perception, what does that mean? It means non-conceptually. It is cognized by a mind non-conceptually. So in the meantime, we're talking about reasonings and how we assert the lack of inherent existence. We use reasonings, logic, and so forth. But when it doesn't appear dualistically, meaning out there, like me here, that there, no this and that, no me and you, nothing. That lack of so, for example, the lack of true existence of the vase is the ultimate truth of the vase. So here both schools would agree on the lack of true existence of the vase is its emptiness, is its ultimate truth. And of course, the vase and its lack of true inherent existence arise at the same time. So that you say that two truths, conventional truth and ultimate truth, arise at the same time. So here, logically, what's one way we could assert that? We could assert that the vase does not exist inherently because it is produced, because it comes into existence. And anything that comes into existence has to go out of existence, or it is a dependent arising. And we use that term, then we forget what dependent arising means. Depend on causes and conditions, depend on its that. So we could, any number of things we could say that. But those two truths arise at the same time. And in a way, it's like, because of emptiness, everything is possible. Because it's emptiness of what? Of true existence, of inherent existence, by innate existence, by existing from its own side, by way of its own characteristics, on its own base, however we want to say it, or that is empty of that, which means if it's empty of that, it doesn't exist independently, therefore it has to exist dependently because there's no third option, correct? Either dependent or independent. They're mutually exclusive. So it can't be both, but it also can't be neither. It's got to be one or the other. Okay.
So when you say the two truths both arise
at
the same time, you're talking about ultimate truth
and conventional truth. And I said it in relation to, like, it's always in relation to an object of our apprehension. Sound, a sight, a smell, a shape, a person. Yeah.
So a vase can be an ultimate truth?
The emptiness of, no, I didn't say it. I didn't say that. This is where we have to refine what we hear. So the two truths of the vase arise at the same time. So conventionally, the vase comes into existence, and we can analyze all of that, right? At the same time as that, the emptiness of the vase, in other words, because it's dependent on this and that and this and that, it's empty of true existence, of inherent existence, of permanent existence, of self-sufficient existence, so forth, because it's dependent on so many different things. So it's a sort of, in a way, it's extremely logical. It's got to arise at the same time. So you get that? Yeah. Yes.
So, Venerable, is conventional, when you refer to conventional truth,
yes,
is that really about the way we all agree about
correct.
a certain narrative of that?
Yeah. So,
that object,
so we talk about it being a valid cognizer. I can't say table is computer because it's not conventionally accepted in the world yet. Almost, we've got tablet, almost table, just got a T on the end still. I'm joking, I play with words. So it's conventionally accepted in the world that this is computer, this is table. You are Rob.
But that vase with the flowers that we all agree,
the vase with the flowers,
vase and flowers. But
yes.
If you were sitting, so you only saw directly above
the
only
vase,
saw the flowers.
Yes.
And you didn't see the vase.
Yes, if you didn't see the vase, you only saw the flowers.
Yeah.
Then you'd see flowers. And we'd agree they're flowers. We wouldn't say they're flowers in a vase.
No.
Because we don't see the vase. But we can also use valid inferential cognition. So we could say, because the flowers are sitting on table, something must be holding it there. Therefore, there is a vase on the table. So we can use a valid inferential cognition. But somebody else could come along and say, it doesn't pervade. What would be an example of that? Your florist phone could be sitting in florist phone, could be sitting in clay, could be sitting in an inkwell. Well, we don't have any tables with inkwells anymore. It was an old antique table with an inkwell.
I think we all remember.
I remember using blotting paper. Well, it doesn't matter whether it's artificial or live. We can debate that too. Well, do flowers need a vase? Well, do these flowers need a vase? Do they need a receptacle? Like if I drop them, They need something to hold them there.
Be held by lucky men.
They could be held by, but would they be held vertical by a lucky band? Oh, they could. You would probably do a beautiful arrangement of that.
I'll keep much.
I'm not pulling them apart, okay? That's Dundruk's gig. When is a flower not a flower? When you pull off all the petals, is it still a flower?
Tara Meditation Centre, they have some flowers that actually do sort of, they're wrapped in like fabric and they sit like
Oh,
that.
that's true. They have a little fabric pouch.
Yeah, like a little Hessian thing.
So you could see how we would debate and debate and debate and debate, and you'd say that, you know, the flowers do not need a vase.
But we say that ultimate truth, they're empty because they are
Dependent arising. They are empty because they are dependent arising. That's the easiest way to say it. So the two things arise simultaneously. So it's described as two sides of the one coin.
And do we say that with the self as well?
Yes.
So the physical self.
And see that,
arising.
yes. And then we have different levels of understanding of that emptiness. So, for example, coming back to the Middle Way Autonomy School, so there's two levels, a gross selflessness of person and a subtle selflessness of person. So all schools assert these, but they assert them differently. They assert there is a gross selflessness and there is a subtle selflessness. So the subtle selflessness, you'd say, is trying to get to the most subtle. So I can't see, just using an example, I can reason that the vase is, now I'm fixated on the flowers being in the vase. I know we've got an empty vase. That's not good. Making an empty offering. Oh my God, life's complicated. Anyway, so the vase. So I know that the vase is impermanent. What I cannot observe is its moment by moment coming into existence, abiding. Well, at the moment it's abiding, but at the same time it's going out of existence. But I can't perceive that. I can reason that on the basis that, well, everything that comes into existence abides for however long and at some point goes out of existence. Now, we can help it along going out of existence, and I'm not going to do that by...
Thank you.
Well, it will bounce off this floor, but, you know, you could drop it and on some hard surface that it would break and it would cease to be a vase, right? And it no longer even have a base suitable to be labelled vase because it'll be all smashed. But some way or other, it's going to go out of existence. I guess if you left it for thousands of years, you know, when archaeologists, you know, dig up things, when it's sort of china and glass objects and things like that, they haven't seemed to lose their shape, except if they're cracked bits or whatever. But it seems they maintain that shape. So even then, you'd say you can't see that subtle momentary impermanence changing moment by moment of the vase.
It doesn't get preserved, it gets rolled around.
It gets rolled around.
Like when you walk along the beach.
Yes, and yes, these etchings or whatever would become smoothed. Yeah. So definitely we would see that decay, but yeah.
We can't even tell, like, that it might be becoming brittle. We can't see that.
Yeah. So according to the Middle Way Autonomy, the gross selflessness, let's say with person, when we get to phenomena, selflessness of person, is it's empty of what is asserted by the Great Exposition School. It's empty of being permanent, just saying we will all come to an end. We are empty of being permanent. We are empty of being unitary, and this is countered by the fact of we're made up of parts. There's not like, we hold on to this sense of me as being one entity, but when we analyse, it's made up of parts. I mean, conventionally, there is a person here, and that person is made up of parts. I'm not talking about the the self-grasping innate. Right.
So what, let's say, posit the AI be able to get this little microchip?
The AI, an AI robot or something.
Intelligence and a microchip.
Yeah, and the microchip.
The brain of someone.
And put it in someone's brain, yeah.
So this person now has artificial intelligence.
They've already, yeah, okay.
So that artificial intelligence.
That artificial intelligence might have a bit of a debate with your own natural intelligence. It would be very interesting, wouldn't it?
What happens if it expires?
The artificial intelligence? Well,
the natural intelligence expires through lack of use.
The natural intelligence, well, we could say the brain will expire, because when we're talking a chip, and see, this was what we were saying last week, it's called artificial intelligence.
It's a chip.
But is it intelligent? Or is it merely sophisticatedly programmed?
I'd say the latter.
I don't know. It might be intelligent from its own side, but is it? And so what makes a being is what? Being sentient, having a mind.
So the person has a mind.
The person has mind.
But the artificial chip going in there,
yeah,
gives him supernatural powers to do calculations and
yeah.
do all sorts of things.
Well, it's not supernatural powers, is it? It's being programmed that way.
Yeah, but then
I mean, I don't know, but it looks. But isn't the desire by some human beings to think that there's some independent intelligence out there, like we have extraterrestrials, we have, all these aliens who've come to Earth, and they may well have, and they may well be sentient. But when we come to artificial intelligence, the part of it being artificial, it's still artificial. It's not real.
Tom.
Tom. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Last week I read a research paper of this experiment done. Can everyone hear me?
Can you all hear Thomas, or I'll repeat? Yeah.
Okay.
I'm turning you around. Others can see you. I mean, I'm not turning you around. I'm turning the computer around.
So, 2022, this paper was published. A group of scientists in a lab, they use stem cells to grow neurons, brain cells, and then get all these brain cells to connect with each other with synapses. And they did it so that it's flat on a dish, and they install overlapping with a disk of an array of electrodes, high density electrodes. And the functions of the electrode is that first, it can detect electrical signals that comes out of the brain cells. And it also can send electrical signals into the brain cells.
Right.
And therefore, they found a way to communicate with the brain cells. And they, using that array, and then depending on the location, the coordinates, it connects that array with a computer program that runs a video game called Pong. Pong is a very old video game where basically a ball bounces around a box, and then you have the a plate that you need to move to bounce the ball back up. You don't let it drop. And they will give it a feedback loop, right? They call this the dish brain, right? They actually name it the dish brain. And eventually it learned to play the game. And how the scientists did it was, if it successfully bounces the ball back up, the scientists would send an expected pattern of electrical signals to the brain cells, to dish brain. If it misses and it drops the ball, so it loses, then it will send a pattern of signal that is unexpected. It's surprising. And based on what they call this free energy principle, this chaos is something that innately the dish brain, the bunch of neurons, doesn't like. It likes to have that predictable pattern of electrical signals. And that is what motivates it to keep playing the game and learn to become better at hitting the ball back. And over time and time, with rest period, giving it proper, like training times, it improved the performance. But then as soon as they remove the feedback electrical signals, right, it no longer is motivated to play the game well. It doesn't, play the game like it should. And they would have to turn on that feedback loop to make it play the game well again.
Yeah.
And what really shocked me when reading about this experiment is that there's a physical form, rupa, there is sensation, there is perception, and there is volition, because it's motivated to play the game. And it's storing some skill, some knowledge, or whatever information that makes it learn the game and play better over time. So is that consciousness? Are the 5 aggregates complete? That that some consciousness has entered or occupied or is attached to this brain, this collection of brain cells, such that it is a sentient being, and is it suffering? Are the scientists actually creating a new form of suffering of electrical pulses in a chaotic pattern? And there has been other scientists who published papers saying that this is bioethics. This is an ethical issue that we need to talk about. Like, we need to have regulations on how we do this kind of experiments, because we might be, as scientists, creating suffering for potentially sentient beings. So I'll just leave it there. But to me, it's like ground shattering. But I'm using this as a preliminary practice of how precious is this human body. Imagine if my brain is stuck on a dish and being electrocuted for losing a game, like, and not getting a chance to learn Buddha Dharma. Like, how precious is this human body? And that impermanence.
Sorry, it's not your brain that learns the Buddha Dharma, it's your mind.
Yes. But then I need this human body, these eyes,
to function.
This internet connection. Positive karma merit.
Yeah.
And then
these experiments do bring up some, definitely bring up ethical questions. However, it's interesting that everything you described is like stimulus response, which you can do. Yeah, Pavlov's dog. You can do, but the dog is a sentient being. You can do to brain, like you can stimulate certain cells or areas of the brain to get a response. But what they're not understanding is thoughts, emotions, these things are actually mind generated, not brain generated. So there's still like this thinking that, well, if I get it to stimulus response, which I can do with the brain, then that's a sentient being, but it's not necessarily, So I think be very careful in this whole area. But yes, once they start putting the chips in human beings, I think we need to worry, or even animals, we need to worry. Yes, that's an ethical issue. That's true. Yeah. Thank you. His Holiness Dalai Lama,
He was talking to a group of scientists.
Yes.
And he was talking about the 3 drops. 1 drop from mother, 1 drop.
Yeah, the white and red drops from mother and father.
It happens before conception, and also separates at death.
Yes, the 2 drops that we have that separate at death time, in the indestructible drop at the heart,
Scientists said, well, all you need is the sperm from dad and the egg from mom.
Yes, that's true.
And you have life.
Yeah, the sperm and the egg coming together, you have life.
Together, you have life.
Not the scientist and the chip.
Yeah, but if that and that together will have life.
Yeah.
But
You have not.
but it doesn't always have life.
No, because you need mind as well.
Yeah.
You've got to have the sperm and the egg plus mind.
Plus, the third factor.
Plus mind. And this is what the scientists don't have. Well, they don't have they're doing, it's artificial. It's a simulated, it's like we had simulation games. It's a simulation game.
But they're putting it in the third factor, which is human being.
Well, I'd be putting it into the human being, but you'd have to say, does that chip affect mind?
Or brain.
Or brain, right? And it's not like, and I get the point, Thomas, of course, we need the brain for the mind to function.
Yeah.
Up to a certain point. Better to become highly realized and we don't need the brain to function and we can just have the mind and
yeah, my question is,
be formless in the formless realm in meditative absorption. Yeah, your question, Thomas, your next question.
Yeah, my question is thinking about test tube babies, right? Where yes, you know, there's the sperm and the egg, and there's also the sheep, the clone sheep Dolly, right? The scientists, Dolly.
Dolly, the clone sheep.
Dolly, the clone sheep. Okay, so they were made, or if you will, or the conception happens in lab conditions. Okay, so yes, they use, you know, a sperm and an egg, and did the fertilization in lab, and then let the cells grow. And at some point, the 12 stages of dependent originations, at some point, some sentience that the mind is there, and you know, that's its existence as a sentient being, right? And like a test tube baby can grow into a normal human, and Dolly is, you know, they show up, it behaves like any other sheep. So, you know, it's that's a sentient animal. So my question is, you know, now scientists are growing fish brain, right? Brain cells. Let's say with stem cell technology, they start growing more organoids, right? And then assemble them so that it has all these sense organs, like eyes, ears, and etc., connect with the brain. At what point would someone reincarnate into that body? Because it's because of the causes and conditions, you know, they end up with a rebirth into that body. Now, if it can happen with a biological body that's created in the lab, let's say, can the same happen with silicon chips? I don't know, but it's me asking the question, at what stage will a bunch of organs be sufficient for the mind to be attached to it, such that it is an organism, as a sentient being organism?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's a big issue. It's an interesting issue, because you would say that for the mind to enter, all it needs is the sperm and the egg coming together. But it does need the sperm and the egg coming together. All it needs is that, but it does need that.
Clone comes to existence.
How does a clone come into existence?
It's a part of
the part of the body.
Existing body that is related. I don't think they add in extra egg and sperm, do they, Thomas?
So the clone,
They take a cell.
stem cells. Yeah.
Stem cells.
And the question is, can you take a clone cell and clone cell?
Oh gosh, it's getting very complicated.
But it's still not dependent arising. Everything ultimately come from the.
Well, it is dependent arising. It's all got to be, but it has all the right causes and conditions coming together.
You take the sperm cell, the clone.
Yeah.
If there is no mind.
If there's no mind there, it's like a robot.
It's just like 3D printing. They now make
3D printing. I mean, when we can 3D print humans, can we 3D print
they
humans?
do meat and the vegan stuff that looks like meat,
And you can eat it.
and you can eat it, but there's no life in it.
Is there any proteins in it?
So using 3D printing to help with breast reconstruction.
Well, that I get, but food has it all got the right nutrients in there in the 3D printer? Yeah, it does. Oh my God. It's a whole new world. Whole
Yeah.
world.
We don't know what's going to happen
Yeah.
this time. You might grow a third arm or
We might have another, what was it? Soylent Green, remember? Coming out of the machine. Yeah. It's an area of big debate, I would think. We have to get the scientists debating with the Dalai Lama debating with the scientists about this one. Because if your assumption is that this is creating independent life, that's incorrect. That is not correct, because it depends what you're programmed to do or not to do. You know?
Yeah. And I guess reincarnation into a body, the question is, at what stage will a body be eligible for rebirth?
Well, the body, we would say, is eligible for rebirth at that moment of conception, like traditionally at the moment of conception. So the sperm, egg, and mind coming together.
Yeah. But you see, that's humans are like that, right? And like mammals, because we eggs and sperms. But there are also, I understand in the sutra, there are other beings where
born from the womb,
don't need
egg, born from heat, born from spontaneous birth. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, maybe Buddha didn't say this to confuse people, like silicon, like born of silicon, like semiconductor chips. I mean,
when you're in a
I don't know.
form, you're not born from a womb because you're not physical.
But would a formless being go into a form and inhabit?
Well, they do. Well, if you think about spirit harm, is like they're predator beings, they're hungry ghosts. But within the hungry ghost realm, we have all the sort of spirits, right, as well. So that spirit, people have been inhabited by spirits. As Lama Zopa said, I felt the spirit come in through my left side and grab my power of speech. When Rinpoche manifested stroke, that's how he described it. I felt it happen like that. And there has been, there was at Kopan, there was an exorcist monk, Geshe, who knew how to get the spirits out by talking to them, asking what they want. So, so they can inhabit other beings. It could. Often it is about that. I mean, generally mental illness from a Tibetan medicine point of view is an imbalance of the wind energy. And we talk about the interdependence of external and internal, right, elements, the earth, water, fire, air, space, how interdependent it is. And so the more disturbances externally, well, it's also dependent on the internal disturbances. We see that manifest grossly in the world with all these wars, that you've got one very disturbed mind creating a whole lot of beyond havoc in the world because of that interdependence, But you could also say that agitated energy in the world can also affect your mind. Like when Kajala first came to Australia, she came here, right? Well, the only time she's been to no. Did she go to Bendigo when Rinpoche manifested stroke? She might have. But anyway, when she came on the teaching tour 2014, and she had two Geshes travel with her. because she's sensitive to the energies around, right? And of course, there's positive energies around, but there also can be not so positive energies around. So they were like her protectors. Huh? I don't know how it all works. Believe me, I don't know how it all works. But also because she would, you know, when she first went to Dharamsala and well, even when she was in Tibet, and you know, most people thought she was just crazy, whereas she wasn't crazy, but she was susceptible to all these different energies, right?
She does have vision.
She's an oracle, but you know, the Nate Chung oracle, when he came to Chenrezig Institute, he was just, because people were asking, how does it work, you know? And it's not like he's always having this, you know, in that state. He's sort of like, he says, it's not me. It's like it comes through me, right? Yeah. Don't know how that works. There's many things we don't know how they work, right? But I think this is it is a very interesting area. It's a whole bioethics thing. And it's an area that I think in the school system that because I know when I've been for talks with high school students that's an area where they're very interested in, especially around use of stem cells and so forth, the ethics of all of this. And, you know, maybe like next year we're going to be introducing this mind science program that is a new program for FPMT. So it's an introductory one. I don't know how elaborate it'll be. I'll have to wait for my orientation to that. But it's a big area, you know, because mind science is, from a Western perspective, the study of the mind is very, very new. It's only like 50 years or so. Whereas, of course, the Buddha, of course, 2,600 years ago. But then we have to look at these other factors that weren't there 2,600 years ago, stem cells and all of this. This is not a phenomenon that was known. So yeah, artificial intelligence wasn't a thing. So yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you put a holy object? We fill up statues with mantras, with other holy objects. So there are different mantras for different areas of the body. And then say if I'm filling a medicine Buddha statue, it's going to have more medicine Buddha mantras. Then, you know, you're going to focus on ones in relation to that. But there are sort of standard ones for the head, throat, for heart, for the lotus it's sitting on, and other ones that, you know, put them in this part in relation to ones that are your guru or whatever. So these are all setting up positive vibrations, we could say. That's what mantras do. Protection for the mind, for our mind. And so you could always, and of course we wouldn't leave a hollow holy object. You know, we fill it with precious objects. I mean, when you do the stupas, even like on the base of the stupa, because, you know, at Tara Meditation Centre, we will at some point be constructing that stupa once we get the go-ahead from the council. We're waiting for that. And you even put, you know, Lama Zopa Rinpoche says to get earth from wealthy people's places. So you could say all of these things have their own vibrational energy. Yeah, it's positive energy. And they're generating that positive energy in the world, just like the prayer wheels, which are full of mantras, that we get to spin that, the prayer flags and so forth. So everything is about generating positive energy into the world. Ourselves included, our own mantra recitation. Literally, we've gotten that vibrations internally, but also externally. And I remember with the Kala Chakra in 96 at Horden Pavilion in Sydney, with the Dalai Lama and the Namgyalma monks. So his monastery is Namgyal Monastery. And the Namgyal monks were reciting and chanting for that whole period of time, 10 days or so. And then after the Kalachakra, I don't know how many days later, probably wasn't long, we were at Darling Harbour waiting for the public talk. And it was like you could hear the monks. We thought they were already here, but they weren't there. And isn't that interesting? That you could hear, even though it was nowhere near the teachings, were the actual sound of those mantras. And me and my friend, it wasn't just me, it wasn't just my friend, it was both of us. We were convinced they were there and they weren't there. So then you think, well, what's it like to be one of those monks, always, all day, reciting those mantras? What sort of experience are they having? Very different, right? It's very palpable.
Decades ago, I asked somebody this.
Yeah.
Why do you do that? And his answer was, if you leave it hollow, and people's spirit will enter.
Well, if you leave it, because we also make sure, like with statues, stupas, etc., there are no hollows. There's no holes. So, like, for example, when John and I were filling this one, the Guru Rinpoche statue, and took about a week, at least 2 weeks, sorry, took 2 weeks. And you'd be filling it with all these things and you think it's full. And then you poke a stick or something down and all the sandalwood goes down into the gaps you didn't know were there. And then you find out where the holes are because some of it comes out because there's holes, where they haven't soldered it, precisely. And so you've got to fill all them up. But it's also filling, part of the filling like that is for insects, to stop insects falling in.
And I would...
Yeah.
So it's not it is true.
It is true, yeah. It's not facetious, yeah. It's just like the water bowls. We don't, and we recite Amahung, Amahung, Amahung at least as we offer the water bowls. Why? Because otherwise we might get some malevolent spirits in there. And so it sort of wards them off. This is why it's a mantra's protection.
Yeah. Two people very close to me, my daughter and my best friend, they are sensitive.
You've gone up. Can you get closer or speak louder because your volume's gone down?
Is it better now?
Yes.
Okay. My daughter and my good friend, they are sensitive to energies. They very, in particular, do not like going into antique shops, especially if there are mannequins or dolls. Antique shops generally are filled with a lot of spiritual beings that are often not very friendly. And they especially like to get into dolls or mannequins or statues. And the more people interact or look at or worship or do anything to the statues or paintings or pictures, apparently those spiritual beings like it more, and they tend to reside in them for many, many years. So my hypothesis is that if you don't fill it with positive stuff, with dharma, with energy that's good nature, other types of energy, possibly negative or might get in. I think that's a benefit of filling statues.
Yeah. Also, thank you for that. Also, this is a big topic and do want to get back to what we're talking about. And this is why, like the lamas will say, never wear somebody else's shoes, or secondhand shoes and so forth, because there's a big thing about your feet and that they could come in through your feet and things like that. Mind you, one time, Lama Zopa Rinpoche went to put my shoes on, and I did say, oh, Rinpoche, they're my shoes, but I thought, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I should have, I don't think I would have fitted his feet.
I was going to say.
I don't think they would have fitted, but it was like, oh, maybe I should have let Rinpoche try and pop my shoes on. At least I'd get the vibes. Of course, we do all that sort of thing. But yeah, it's that point of, and of course, if we were able to communicate with those spirits and pacify them, just like Guru Rinpoche was able to do, and see what it is they need, or so forth. Yeah, that might help them to also let go of that attachment. Yeah, looking for a home. Yeah. Okay, so that's now, after that long diversion, I mean, interesting diversion, but yeah. So we're still with the middle way autonomy school. So we're talking about this gross selflessness of the person being empty of being permanent, unitary, or, sort of one whole, and independent. The subtle selflessness is being empty of being a self-sufficient, substantially existent. That's where you of being self-sufficient. So if we analyze self-sufficient, we could say, well, definitely not. We can't even last outside of the womb for a nanosecond. Or maybe a nanosecond we can, but not very much longer. And substantially existence. The substantial existence is that idea of there's got to be something there from its own side, something substantial. It doesn't have to be big substantial, it can be a small particle, right? So, yeah. And then, yeah, okay. So, let's see how much more. So also they do subscribe to Mahayana and Hinayana sutras, and they assert both kinds of sutras. Of course, all the higher schools do, all the Mahayana schools do. So we say that they're all teachings of the Buddha. We don't sort of say these ones. And why it's said like that is because the lower schools don't assert Mahayana sutras, because they didn't get those teachings, basically. So, yeah. So, all right. So now we're sort of segueing into the middle way consequence school, which is where we want to be. So the Buddha, it's taught by the Buddha himself. We have Arya Nagarjuna, Atisha Chandrakirti. So, preserve the Buddha's teachings on the basis of cultivating the meaning of them, attaining the realizations. And we have the tradition that we subscribe to coming from Lama Atisha, the Kadampa masters like John Tompa, and so on, all the Kadampa Geshis, and then down to Lama Tsongkhapa establishing what we now know as the Gelugpa school. They all say that the fundamental cause of samsara is our innate self-grasping, grasping at being existence, having a self, grasping at the aggregates, at outer phenomena. We were just talking about these spirits being attached to outer phenomena. Even they don't have 5 aggregates, they've got everything except for form. Well, actually, they have subtle form. They do have subtle form. There's graphic descriptions of the spirit forms, and so forth. Okay. And, that clinging to this idea of me being permanent, existing from my own side, or other phenomena, particularly for lower schools, having some inherent existence from its own side. All of this propels us through this cycle of the 12 links, which Thomas just sort of alerted to just a minute ago. And so not even attaining, sort of lower, we would say lower nirvana, Hinayana liberation, let alone full enlightenment. And so this is known by all Buddhas and all highly realized beings, you could say, particularly bodhisattvas, Arya bodhisattvas. So in order to be free of that, we have to eradicate all the delusions. So we talk about the 2 levels of obscurations. We talk about afflictive obscurations, which is the by having a direct perceptual realization of emptiness, we eliminate those, and so those who are following a lower path would then abide in that lower nirvana. And then the knowledge obscurations or cognitive obscurations, same thing, is like the imprints of that. We say it's like the garlic in the jar. I mean, the garlic, you remove the garlic, let's say that's the afflictive obscurations, you remove that, but there's still the smell of the garlic. It can become garlic, right? But that's just like the imprint on the mind, which is still obscuring us. And so this is where we need to complete the path, which includes, a 10th ground bodhisattva who has not, then needs to do the complete stage of Tantra in order to arise as a Buddha, right? So we've got to have the ultimate bodhicitta is that we'd say conventional bodhicitta, spontaneous bodhicitta we're talking about, which is the generation of bodhicitta is a thing that enables us to enter the path of accumulation, Mahayana path of accumulation, but we need the final view of emptiness and combining the two together in the one mind. So it becomes non-dual, the one mind of bodhicitta and the final view on emptiness. Okay. So, for example, Lama Tsongkhapa in the three principal aspects of the path talks about the final view. This is where it's on page 145 if you've got the gold prayer book, but this is the three principles of the path where he says the extreme of inherent or permanent existence, so that extreme is excluded, or we could say antidoted, by the knowledge of the nature of appearances existing only as nominal designations, merely labelled by the mind. So that destroys inherent existence, okay? And the extreme of total non-existence, nihilism, is excluded or antidoted by the knowledge of the nature of emptiness. In other words, dependent arising, the flip side, knowledge of the nature of emptiness as the absence of inherent existence and not the absence of nominal existence. So you're not chucking everything out. You're not being nihilistic. You're saying things exist, but they exist in this way conventionally, nominally. It's a mere convention. It's a way of, let's say, engaging in the world. It's a way of communicating and so forth. And then it says, if within emptiness, so you'd say meditating on emptiness, within emptiness, the way of the appearance of cause and effect is known. Cause and effect, dependent arising, causes and conditions. You will not be captivated by extreme views. So at the moment we could say we are captivated by extreme views, even though intellectually we accept all of this, we are still act in the world as if things are conventionally independent out there from their own side. If somebody annoys me, it's their fault, nothing to do with me, right? It's over there, etc. We respond like that. It's like we inherently respond like that because we've got this innate self-grasping.
We can also see how the Geshes don't.
Yeah, we can see how the Geshes don't. You can see this very even mind that doesn't get all these elaborate tales and just goes boom. It's like when Dalai Lama, we talked about meeting with the mind scientists, and when I might have mentioned last time when Professor Ian Hickey at one of our happiness conferences a few years ago asked His Holiness, you know, in all these years, like it's been decades now, a lot of decades, what have you learned from the scientists? And he said, nothing. But they've learned a lot from me. So, which is a purpose, right? Because they're scientists, they're developing that, you know, whether it's in physics, whether it's in biology, whether it's in mind science, whatever, they're developing those fields, right? And so he just sort of drops this, you know, they go, oh, we've just had this most amazing discovery. And he goes, have you thought of this? It's just like deadpan. He picks up gaps.
Their assumption.
And it's like the debating. Have you thought about this? He's saying. He's not that conventional style of debating, but it's like, and what about this? It's that thing of, oh, that doesn't pervade, as we say. You know, you've got a little gap in your, what do we say? You know, blind spot. Yeah. It's like, so basically, what Lama Tsongkhapa is saying here, until we are able to establish dependent existence, in other words, conventional reality, within the meaning of emptiness, right? Within, not separately, within the meaning of emptiness, not seeing two flip sides of the coin, but from within that, we're able to establish dependent existence. We will not be able to gain the realization of emptiness. Right? So this is where it comes down to, because of emptiness, everything comes into existence. Anything is possible. Everything is possible because of emptiness, of anything being inherent, being permanent, being fixed, being solid. Everything subject to change. Everything is impermanent. We're fluid. Our minds are fluid, just like, you know, you see Vasubandhu and he goes, oh, yes, well, he's not going to stick right fixated on that school. He's going to say, oh, yeah, I can see where, you know, I can go further. I can see where I go further. And this is for us too, to see where we can go further. It's like, you know, our great lamas and the Buddhas, they're light years ahead of us. Light years. The Buddha 2,600 years ago, light years ahead of us.
Well, I think it's been expressed in teaching that I've been at that. Because of emptiness, enlightenment is possible.
Yes, because of emptiness, enlightenment is possible. Because everything's possible. Because it has to be inherent, empty of inherent existence, of true existence, of permanence. Because if it's permanent, it'd be just like there wouldn't be any reason to go to school. We wouldn't learn a thing. We couldn't progress at all at anything. We couldn't function exactly. There'd be no functioning. I hate to think. Permanently stuck.
Yeah, blobs.
And you'd have to say, then where did the big blobs come from? It's like, in Sydney, they've been having those.
Oh, yes, the tar blobs.
No, they thought they were tar blobs, but now they're what? Feces and oil. Human feces and oil. Mixture of things.
Something to do with the Maroubra outfall.
I don't know, but they just landed on these beaches. And it's just like, where did that come from? Didn't come from outer space. The poor scientists, they said they really stink and they're having to cut them in half, analyze them, and see what the, poor things. Yes, human waste. So Lama Tsongkhapa here is saying that we need to see dependent existence within the context of emptiness, and likewise the lack of inherent existence within dependent existence. So it's when the mind holds these two simultaneously in the one mind, non-dualistically, that he says, well, then resort to solitude, generate the power of effort, accomplish quickly your final aim, my child. Now you're ready for the cave. So things are empty, but not empty. So what is he saying when he says things are empty, but not empty? empty of inherent existence, but not empty because of dependent existence. Again, it comes down to the thing of if it's something permanent, if it's something self-sufficient, if it's something substantial from its own side by way of its own characteristics, it cannot be a dependent arising. But then we interrogate everything in the world or phenomena that we know and see that everything comes into existence by causes and conditions, right? Anything that comes into existence by nature can't be permanent because it comes into existence. And because it comes into existence, it's got to go out of existence. No. Okay, so the middle way consequence school, prasangika means consequence. This is the debating the consequences of whatever reasoning that you establish. This school holds that highest view of emptiness, and relying on this method of establishing emptiness, we can attain the omniscient mind, that we can eliminate at least all the obstacles to the mind of omniscience. So this is why it's so important for us to study this philosophical view and trying to get some sense of how that is not just an intellectual exercise, but how to put effort into actualizing that wisdom, realizing the emptiness of, the complete emptiness of both self and phenomena. So we can see that the lower schools that assert only that emptiness of self of persons and not of phenomena have a long way, therefore, to go. And when they attain, therefore, the lower nirvana, they would say nirvana, self-liberation. And so you're there for however long. And at some point, a Buddha will come along and say, hey, get up the path. You won't gain the full realizations if you stay here, that it's further to go. There's more work to do. And so they will, at some point, then enter the Mahayana path, and they're, sort of like they're, like in relation to Tantra, for example, they enter that path in relation to Tantra, in a very advanced state. So it's not like they have to start from the very beginning, you would say, but they have to accomplish that path, because the bodhicitta mind, that you cannot say that, that Theravadan practitioner, for example, doesn't have compassion. We all have compassion. I mean, all human beings have. Most animals have compassion. As the Dalai Lama said, I wonder where compassion kicks in. Single celled amoeba, maybe not, etc. He definitely decided mosquitoes aren't compassionate. He's got a thing about mosquitoes. Well, it is India, and they, a lot of diseases are born by mosquitoes. So he goes, mosquitoes definitely not. But you get to the mammals, and there's so much compassion within mammals. So, caring for others of other species, and let alone caring for each other and so forth, raising up, I don't know, pigs raising, cats raising pigs, or I'm not sure if pigs raise cats, but, across species. It's very interesting. There is that compassion. So we talk about, so we need to realize the emptiness of self and of phenomena. And this is why we use both terms, selflessness, we would say selflessness of person. Sometimes we also say, and then selflessness of phenomena, or emptiness, selfless and empty, both. Right? So we have to realize that. So, when we study, for example, of course, the Lam Rim, some of you here doing Discovering Buddhism, for example, the Lojong teachings, the mind training teachings, things like Bodhisattva's way of life, the tantric teachings, frequently we have this word wisdom mentioned, and this refers to the middle way consequence school of understanding the wisdom of emptiness. So in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, we call this the mother. Sometimes called the mothers because it's the long one, the medium one, and the abridged, the mother or the mothers. So we talk about, Prajnaparabhita, the mother of wisdom, the mother of Buddhas, and so forth. And so the views of the lower schools, from the Great Exposition School all the way up to including the middle way autonomy, are not qualified to be a direct antidote to eradicate that self-grasping. Only the middle way consequence school does that, right? Because it gets to the point of being merely labeled by mind, merely a mere nomination, a mere label that we impute, the mind imputes upon things to be existing in a way that they don't exist at all. I remember when I was at Vajrayana Institute and people would say, in my kitchen, I've got merely labeled cupboard, using post-it notes, merely labeled cupboard, merely labeled washing machine, merely labeled knife, fork, spoon, merely labeled everything. As a reminder, everything is that, even you're not, sort of analyzing it at the time, just these little sort of reminders to ourselves. Does not exist as it appears, is not inherently existent. And if you let go of that sort of grasping at inherent existence, when the vase breaks, you're not going to get a shock. It's just going to be, well, it was a vase, no longer vase, lack of vase, lack of functionality as vase, etc. So it can be quite liberating, really. It's okay, That's the idea. So this was the teachings of that second turning of the wheel in Rajagriha, that Buddha teaching that everything, form, aggregates, products, stages of grounds and paths, results, karmic causes, everything, up to achieving full enlightenment, is entityless, that all aspects of phenomena are empty of their own characteristics. Nothing that has its own independent existing characteristics. So this is this final assertion of the view on emptiness. And this is what we unpack when we study, like, the Heart Sutra. There is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness. And you go, what is there? Nothing. And then, of course, that would be a nihilistic view. And so you have to say nothing inherent from its own side. These things exist. And therefore, if we look at, like, the 12 links, no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no death, aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death, it's like, okay, there is a way out of this cycle of samsara. You see, there's no, so we look at that. If there's no ignorance, there's no karmic formation. If there's no karmic formation, no consciousness, etc., etc. And also the Four Truths. I mean, the very first teaching of the Buddha on the Four Truths for noble Arya beings, which is very self-evident to an Arya being. And he says there's no suffering, origination, cessation, and harm. There's no attainment and also no non-attainment. So in emptiness of that, these things exist, but none of these things are inherent. None of these things are permanent. None of these things are fixed. So this is what we're invited to interrogate again and again and again, and find different ways of looking. Okay. So, as I mentioned earlier, the fact that the middle way consequence school is called that consequence, because they assert inferences, realizing propositions by stating a consequence to things, identifying faults in the assertions of their opponents, just like Kamla Shila did, just like Lama Tsongkhapa did, by analysing the different views presented, which enables that opponent to realise, oh, I did leave something out there. Oh, yeah, maybe it's a scientific approach. Maybe I didn't complete the experiment. I didn't apply all the reasonings. And of course, at the same time, it's establishing that middle way consequence school. So, for example, we say sound is impermanent. Sound is impermanent. So for middle way autonomy school, they say sound is impermanent. Why? Because it is a product, and a product is impermanent. And that's correct, isn't it? Table. Table is a product. Therefore, table's impermanent. And of course, for that, we would then go on and analyse, well, what is a product and what is a non-product, and all of that, as well as what is permanence and what is impermanence. Okay, so let me just see here. So within the middle way consequence, manifest objects, directly perceivable objects, everything I can see around me here, all the mats and the chairs and the tables and everything else, can be ascertained by us ordinary beings through the power of our experience. And so in daily life, we have these manifest objects, but then we have hidden objects that have to be ascertained. We can't see them, but they depend on reasoning. So one particular evident, one is I see, so I can use inferential valid cognition, right? From experience, from previous experience. I see smoke. I don't see fire, I see smoke. But through that, a hidden phenomena, smoke, I can determine there's a hidden phenomena, fire. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Right. And we can debate that. You would think of smoke where there's no fire, right? Good luck with that. Because even the incense sticks, it has this little curlicue of smoke.
Also thinking like, say, traffic jam.
A traffic jam.
You can infer that there's a breakdown or an accident.
You could infer there's a breakdown and an accident, but having gone up and down that freeway a number of times where I haven't seen a breakdown or accident.
Yeah, that was what I was going to. You could, but it's not always proven.
No, so we say, therefore, it's not pervasive. So there's a fault in the argument that says where there's a traffic jam, there must be accident or, what was the other thing?
Breakdown.
Breakdown, accident, yeah.
Or just too many cars.
Yeah, too many cars.
Too many cars all joining in.
Okay, so we have this, conventional truth, which at the manifest level is very self-evident. So that's an object found by a valid cognizer. So in other words, a person who's correctly, we could say, nominating, labeling the object, distinguishing a conventionality. So let's say there's a dog and there's a person, right? We're all going to agree that's dog and that's person, isn't it? Or human, let's say, right? We're not going to say the human is a dog or the dog is a human, I hope. That would be invalid cognition. For example, another example, and this is about that mere imputation. Some years ago, when I was at Vajrayana Institute, and I was just looking at the photo last night and seeing how long ago it was, because you think it's, not that many years. But anyway, we took Geshe Sampton to this Nepali cafe down the road. I think it was called Hungry Ghost, actually. I think the cafe was called Hungry Ghost. Anyway, so we went there for dinner or for lunch. We went there for a meal. And Geshe ordered, along with his meal, roti, right? He says, I want some roti. And they brought out the dishes. And he looked at, he goes, that's not roti. And they said, yes, sir, it is roti. No, that's not roti, like, because he grew up in India. He knows what roti is and he likes roti. And it's like, that's not roti. And this went backwards and forwards a few times. And then in the end, he said, no, the woman said, well, sir, we call it roti. And it's a very good answer. Like merely labelled roti. We call it roti. So then he could accept. It's like debate over. He was very serious up to that point. And then it was like kaboom, a debate. And it just sort of, everybody relaxed. He ate it anyway. So, you know, we generally accept things by certain terms, right? But it depends on our context. Between Summerhill, it's roti. Yeah. So, and as we've talked about, if there wasn't the conventional truth, or we could say conventional existent as a base, there's no way to establish ultimate truth within ordinary existence. And this was one of the things that Lama Tsongkhapa says we need to be able to do. So we have to investigate. So you've got your roti, and then you'd say, well, which bit of this is roti? You know, where, you know, what's the base of labelling roti? Is it a valid label on this accepted base, etc.? So you debate.
So Geshe Sampton was expecting it to look different. That's why
He was expecting it to look different.
That's why he.
Yes. He wasn't the roti of his generic image.
Yeah, that was what I was getting at.
You know, when you go and you order something and you've got an idea of what it's going to look like, and then you look at it and go, that's not what I ordered. Well, actually it is. It's just, we call it that. Maybe we've all had that experience when we ordered food and it hasn't been what we thought it would be.
Oh, look like what the Phoenix claws.
Phoenix?
Phoenix claws.
Phoenix claws.
Chinese restaurant.
Okay.
And out came chicken legs, chicken feet. And she said, I didn't order that.
She didn't order chicken feet. She got chicken feet, but she ordered phoenix claws.
She got something.
It sounds something very exotic.
That's impossible.
Chicken.
It's like the lemons, and I read this thing maybe yesterday where it was, what's wrong with my lemons? Because they were the Buddha fingers. You said the Buddha finger ones. It's just like, no, a lemon's like this. It's round. You know, this is a lemon, not this. Actually, we gave a Buddha's finger. Oh no, one of the students gave a Buddha's fingers plant to Geshe Sampton many years ago, and he passed it on. And I think it's because. Yes, Thomas.
I'll quickly share, since chicken feet or phoenix claw is mentioned.
Phoenix claws, yeah.
Okay, I teach Tai Chi, and one time this came to, like, I realized this teaching, part of the teaching of Tai Chi, and I said, I have no hand. You see, I have the thumb and 4 fingers, so 5 digits, right? So there are a bunch of bones and muscles and connective tissues stuck together, right? But there's no hand, right? Because, okay, think about this. If you're saying that I have a hand, what is it made up of? If you say there are 5 digits transformed into a hand, but these 5 digits still exist. So, you know, you cannot create something from nothing, right? So if the 5 digits are transformed into a hand, then there shouldn't be 5 digits left. I shouldn't have any fingers or thumbs, right? And, you know, for the existence of the hand. However, what if you say that there is there a 6th object called a hand in addition to the 5 digits?
Yeah.
Well, but then if you weigh the thumb, the middle finger, weigh all 5 digits and weigh, okay, like 1 kilogram, there isn't a number 6 object that has, you know, extra mass. And therefore, I also ask my students to imagine going to a tribe in Africa where their language doesn't have the word for hand. They just have word for, you know, fingers and thumbs and forearms, right? If you communicate with them, the idea, you know, show me your hands, they don't know what you're talking about, because they have never labeled the hand. They've only labeled the fingers. So I use this, and all the students straight away understood the concept. I didn't say anything that this is Buddhism, but I think I'm actually getting them to learn about emptiness. There's no inherent existence of a hand.
Yeah, that's great, because as you say, you're not mentioning anything about Buddhism, but I would argue that what you're getting them to do is refine their reasoning, their intellect by developing. I mean, it's a mere system of logic and reasoning, really, at this conceptual level. And so when we come down to this, you know, we're always investigating the merely labeled I. We'd say the merely labeled I, which is the conventional person or illustration of the person, is labeled on the 5 aggregates. So we've got to have the right base of the aggregates to label that. And that happens from the moment of conception. So we could say even the form at the moment of conception is established. It hasn't yet developed all the limbs and things like that. But that potentiality is already there, including, as we were talking before, consciousness. So that is the base of person, suitable to be labeled person, right? And so, and that I is the one, our conventional self in samsara, that, you know, is trying to grapple with this, trying to be a Dharma student, or being a Dharma student, trying to understand, trying to avoid negativity and not keep cycling in cyclic existence. And so, you know, we need to, therefore, as we've been doing, apply logic. And the whole purpose of the Buddha's teaching is destroying our self-grasping mind, which fails to realize dependent arising. You know, and we place all these mental projections out there, and as soon as we've got that mental projection, it's a permanent entity. And like Geshe Santon and his roti, and, you know, whatever we've got that mental image of, and then, you know, we're in a restaurant and we're disappointed and we have an argument, and maybe not Geshe Santon, but the rest of us hold on to our argument very strongly. And no, this is not what I ordered, you know, and you abuse the staff and whatever, and you upset everyone around you because they're all feeling super embarrassed by now that, you know, couldn't you just shut up and eat whatever they give you? And that's a sort of fairly, not a heavy negativity, but, you know, creates disharmony. So from our misconceptions, all that disharmony arises. And, but this non-existent I that we grasp to, or we call ego, whatever we want to call it, you know, the bodhicitta mind, so we can cultivate, of course, we cultivate bodhicitta, but that can't cut through that. That cannot see that is non-existent. Only that mind, the wisdom mind realizing emptiness, the lack of inherent existence, can see this falsity of grasping at this self. And Geshe Zopa mentioned that Geshe Lama Konchak said that as long as we don't, whatever we do, as long as we don't strike at that self-grasping, at the ego, at self-cherishing, at anger, at jealousy. I mean, it's there in Bodhisattva's Way of Life in that chapter on patience. As long as we don't target that, then it's not Dharma practice. It's got to be eroding that self-grasping ego. And it's a very uncomfortable place to be. And I suspect that's why a lot of people don't go further with that investigation. Okay. Yes, please. Go.
If relationships
If relationships, yes.
are independent arising and therefore empty,
Yeah.
what does that mean? And the ultimate end, nihilism, means just don't have any because they're empty. But at the other end, you've got the consequence score.
Yeah.
And so, but what does that mean in terms of relationships? How you manage and enter and participate in your relationship?
You do that. So once you start to think about things in this way, your mind becomes less fixated because you know things aren't fixed. So your mind becomes more spacious, more open, more fluid. And you bring that into relationship, right? And so, in fact, the best thing if you've got a relationship with another Dharma practitioner, but maybe you haven't. I mean, I'm not interrogating who's got what relationships, but having a common ground of the Dharma means that there's, like, for example, we might. Geshe Zopa one time in Brisbane at Langri Tangpa Centre, and his teaching was on practicing the 6 perfections in relationship, right? In the home, in the family. It actually said, if you're both Dharma practitioners, you must stay together because you are each other's practice, if you like. Press each other's buttons and develop like that. But even regardless, so there'd be no such thing as having a relationship is pointless. We are social beings. How on earth how does bodhisattva become a bodhisattva? By reliant on other sentient beings, particularly the ones who rub us up the wrong way. And I'm not saying we get into a relationship because we are attracted to somebody. But if we broaden out the idea of relationship, it's all our relationships that are all an opportunity to practice Dharma, put Dharma into practice, see how much patience we have, see how much we can, sort of focus on others more than ourselves. Not about what are you giving me, but actually what am I giving you? And so forth. So it's a change of orientation. So there's no such thing as, because if you said, as you said, the nihilistic view would be absolutely everything's pointless. You wouldn't do a thing. Or you would. You say it's all pointless, let's go party, But of course, we're going to say it is very meaningful, so we're going to do a Tara Puja in about half an hour. I can see people coming. All right, so as I said, that was a drop in the vast ocean of Buddhist tenets. I hope it's been beneficial. Maybe I'm inspired to maybe continue developing these sessions on Buddhist philosophy next year. So let me know if you're interested.
Is there an exploring Buddhism module that covers?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. I'll talk. Yeah, it's a bit complicated. It's in a few different modules. Of course, because apart from the tenets, the flip side of that, not flip side, but a complementary, is the looking at the different kinds of cognition called awareness and knowers, or So that's a vast topic as well, Yes. Yes.
But they were saying that there might be a follow-up from that.
Yeah. And so we've got another couple of sessions in December, sharpening the sort of sharpening wisdom mind. So there'll be more. Oh, okay. Where yes, Venerable Sewang. Yeah, I'll talk to Rob about that. Yeah. I don't know if there's any. You're right. There was going to be some plan for that. Okay.
Because that would tie in.
It'll tie in very nicely, yeah. Okay, thank you all very much. Let's dedicate. Dedicate. So those of you who have our book on page 8. Gewadi no do da lama sange ne no wa chi kya ma lo pa de sa la go pa sho jan chu sen sho brim bo she ma ke pa nam ge gu chi ke pa nyam pa me pa yang go ne go du pa wa shu. On the next page, a prayer for the long life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world. May you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And a prayer for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Peerless teacher, an assembly of the children of the victorious ones, strikers and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now, holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings. Through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request, while striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels, and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. In the long life prayer for Tenzin Ursul Rinpoche, Lord of Dharma, who in accordance with the various dispositions of those to be subdued, makes clear in the light of your well-spoken advice the sacred Ganden tradition, essence of Buddha's teachings. Foremost and holy Lama, to you who are supreme, we make this prayer of supplication. Lama, please, please live long. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. See you